Peace, family. Welcome to another episode of Broken Theory. Today we got the homie Eeryskies. What's going on?
What's going on? How we doing?
How you living, bro? Where you from?
Good, man. I'm from Maryland. I'm like right between Baltimore and DC, a little closer to Baltimore, but born and raised, grew up here, and just never really left.
Nah, absolutely. How'd you get started with music?
Man, I started back. My father signed me up for guitar lessons in like seventh grade, and that was kind of like my introduction to music. Playing a little bit of guitar, and at that age, you didn't want to like have to go to lessons, so I ended up giving it up after a couple years. But then I was in high school, and my stepbrother moved in with me, and he had, dabbled in production for a while, and he kind of showed me a little bit of the ropes, and then I got into engineering. And basically in high school, I started just recording like a lot of guys from Baltimore and a lot of guys that lived in my area. I built a studio in my mom's basement, and I was engineering for most of, my high school years. Mm-hmm. And then slowly kind of realized that like these guys need beats. And so I started like making them beats in the room, and they weren't really good. But then I kept kind of just like, when you first find like producing, it's exciting. You just couldn't really put it down.
Yeah.
But I didn't really know how to make any money or anything like that. So I went back to engineering when I moved out of my mom's when I was 18, and just kind of recorded people for a while. And then things kind of like, I didn't love the session lifestyle of like having to be somewhere at a time, and like it just kind of felt like
it really sucks.
Yeah, it started to feel like work.
Yeah.
And it's not like these days. I'm fortunate to be in a position where I get to have sessions with artists that I've dreamt of working with, and those are fun. But back then, you're just kind of filling time slots. Mm-hmm. And so, then I just kind of just dove right into making beats, and kind of told myself I would take it seriously and start putting things out on YouTube. And I mean, my first beat I made at the time, I put right out and kind of just set a schedule and really never looked back. And then, I've been doing music almost 4 years full time now. So
wow.
Yeah.
So when you first started on YouTube, or was it a moment that you were like kind of like just perfecting the craft?
I was kind of against the whole, like, I've always been a person where it's like, I don't think you need to have it perfect to start putting it out. I feel like it's just
Absolutely.
more important to start. Yeah. And so kind of just, I knew that there was a tight beat scene, and I got into it right at the time before it was like really saturated, but it wasn't, you had your big names and your guys, but that was really it, because that's where we used to find beats when I would engineer artists. So I knew that world, and I kind of just started putting them on YouTube. Didn't even have a BeatStars, and did that for like 3 months, and then I just kind of like went quiet. And then one of the beats, one of them just took off, and kind of like from there on out, I was like, all right, I'm just gonna put beats out every other day. And then one blew up, and the next blew up, and then you hit like 20,000 subscribers in the first 4 months. And kind of just like, then I set up the BeatStars, and then it became a little more like, I realized that you could make a pretty substantial living from like selling beats. And so it was mainly YouTube at first, and kind of like even to this point, it's like I'm still constantly trying to learn new things, and some beats hit, some beats don't. But I think that's the beauty of like this game, is as a producer, you can just put out so much stuff and try so many new sounds, and kind of like continuously learn and fall on your face and stuff. And that's kind of how I started, and how I've always been.
Absolutely. As a type beat producer, at what point did you feel like you might had to transition into what you're doing right now?
Well, you mean as far as like working more with artists?
Yeah, like on a personal level now.
I would say still mostly all of my income is still selling beats online, and it's still definitely the main grind for me. But kind of like, just as I get further along in this process, you're just naturally going to get more connections. You're going to kind of get these opportunities to work with artists that you grew up listening to. And, being in Maryland, it's a lot of sending out beats. But, I spend my time kind of like a couple times a year in LA and just got back and like really trying to transition into that world of like getting a couple more placements, if not just making those connections and kind of
Yeah.
like it's like a they go hand in hand almost. Like the YouTube is consistent. It gives me freedom. It gives me independence. I don't have to rely on whether or not a song is going to come out, whether or not that pack is going to be listened to by so and so.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like that. I still also have so much fun with YouTube and like making beats and just building an audience.
Yeah.
But as I get deeper into this, it's kind of like, okay, you get this placement, then you get this one, then you get this one. And it kind of just like opens a whole new door of like, okay, you can get publishing income, you can start collecting on masters.
Yep. Yep. And you start looking at the game completely different as far as like your intention and like what you're putting your time to.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's kind of like, as a producer, the best thing you can be doing for yourself is just making beats. I mean, and sharing them somewhere, whether it's with artists, whether it's with YouTube, whether it's both. It's kind of just like, you know, you make 1,000 beats over the course of 3 years, and it's like that's 1,000 beats that are going to continue to sell, and then those are 1,000 beats that you can pull from and send to artists. It's kind of like you should be just doing everything you can and doing it as true to yourself as you can too. That way it stays fun.
100%, man. Like for me personally, like I put together playlists of different vibes, so that way, like, you know what I mean, when I'm locked in with an artist, I'd be like, yo, if you're feeling like kind of like in that Dreamville vibe or like the Griselda vibe or whatever, you know, they could pick from like what they want their project to sound like versus just like wasting a whole bunch of time looking for shit like you know, they may get pulled from eventually, but at least they know they could pick up where they left off if you have it like kind of set up for them, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's kind of like also just especially with this last trip to LA, it was a really heavy like session trip. It's kind of like you know, being able to like understand your catalog. And I mean, as a producer, I'm sure you feel that you can pretty much recall every beat you've made, every like title, the vibe. And it's like when you're in a room with somebody, sometimes they're looking for different things, and just being able to like play stuff on the fly and be versatile and kind of like, even if you don't think you can do it, if someone says like, yo, let's do a live cook up, and you're not feeling confident in making a beat in a room full of people, it's like just sit down and you just try it anyways. It's kind of like, you know, that type of stuff. It's really a learning curve. It's a whole different world of making music when you're in these sessions.
Yeah. How do you approach those sessions? Do you usually send the music out beforehand or just like cook up, or a mixture of both?
I would say a lot of it is, at least from my experience, a lot of it is playing beats. It really depends on who you're working with. If you're kind of invited somewhere with some bigger hitters and things like that, it's kind of, you know, time is valuable for them, and everyone has their own creative process. Some people want a beat made particularly for them. Some people want to just listen to 50 beats and then get the folder and be like, okay, that's cool, I'm gonna write alone now. And it's kind of like every session's a little different, but I would say a majority of the ones I've been in, it's a lot of playing beats and a lot of just like trying to understand what the artist wants and playing things that hopefully hit that. But you know, I've done equally as much in the stuff of like, you're in a room with 2 or 3 producers and 4 or 5 artists, and you're kind of just making beats, getting ideas together. And a lot of the times that type of stuff just kind of starts as demos, and then usually they don't evolve into anything, but every once in a while they do. And that's kind of where that's the most fun for me, is it's just like creating with a bunch of people, the energy. It's like, it's anxiety inducing, it's stressful, but in like a good way, because
it's memorable.
Yeah. And it feels like, I don't know, I guess I could relate to, like, I played sports in high school. It's like you're all trying to like show your skills, you're trying to be the best, you're trying to contribute in a positive way, and you know, sometimes you have to take the back seat. I mean, I've been in plenty of sessions where, you know, me adding something isn't going to do anything, and like knowing when to just be there or knowing when to step in, it's kind of important. But every session's been different.
Yeah, music is definitely a team sport. You know, I'm seeing that over the years, especially how the industry has changed, how like, you know, there's multiple writers on songs, multiple producers on songs. You know what I mean? Like there is no particular way to do anything anymore. So it's like,
no, absolutely
knowing that you shouldn't restrict yourself to anything. You should just go with the flow, you know, keep your creativity
Yeah,
going, always be
definitely.
moldable, you know?
Yeah, and if you're working with the right people, and we've all had bad experiences, but for the most part, if you start building connections with the right people and people that you believe in musically, usually everyone is kind of taken care of, and it keeps things fun when things are natural and
Yeah. And you don't have to worry about money.
yeah, you can kind of be like, hey, and that's another beauty of having most of my income come from beats. Selling beats is kind of like, it gives me the flexibility where it's like, I'd rather have a song come out with an artist that I've always wanted to work with than nitpick over splits and be difficult and things like that.
Yeah.
And you want to protect yourself and obviously get what you deserve, but it's kind of like just being a little more calculated because you got to have the record with no record.
Yeah. 100%, man. What would you say is your most memorable session that you've been in?
Most memorable one was actually in LA. I got to work with Isaiah Rashad, which was a cool one.
Wow.
Yeah, just somebody I kind of not grew up listening to, but through high school found his music and kind of just like, every song I've listened to, all of them are in rotation, and it's always like a really special moment when you get to work with someone that I guess you could say, idolize.
Yeah.
And then not even work with them, but get to meet them and like share thoughts and conversations. It's a really cool experience because we're all just people, and that's kind of like, it's a really eye-opening thing to be like, this person is an idol to me, but we're in here doing the same thing, just making music, talking about life and things like that. And sometimes things don't ever come from it either. Like, who knows if anything comes from that session, but you can kind of just show up, be there, and do your part. And if anything, it's just a connection you got to make with a person, or a couple hours you got to spend with that person.
Were you able to take footage and like capture it, or?
Nah, usually it's a little, it was when you're meeting someone for the first time and it's kind of like you're invited there, and it's really just, I have a little bit of trouble with like, I really just like to take in the moments, and like, I'll film and do things like that with people I'm comfortable with and people I know a little closer. But usually something like that, it's really just like, it's just all about the music. It's like no phones, no pictures, no nothing. Like, let's just play beats, catch a vibe and see what happens. And sometimes those people have their own photographers, videographers, but
what would you say is some advice that you would tell your younger self?
Ooh, that's a good one. Man, I don't know. It's always like those questions of like advice or doing things differently, even though I know that's not what you asked. It's always kind of like, I feel like every step has kind of gotten you to where you are.
Give some advice to somebody just starting out.
Yeah. That's a good one. I would say in the beginning, it was, once you start having eyes and people watching your work, you kind of, it's this whole thing that's like new, like having people listening and giving feedback, and then you bring money in the mix, and kind of like, I found myself creating a lot of the same thing out of like safety. It felt safe, like to make the same vibe, the same beats, use the same drum kits, and never really experiment. And then in the last like year, just kind of like letting go of that and being like, well, the only way I feel like I can like continue to move forward is trying new sounds. And then you have people in your life who introduce new sounds. But I would really just say, like, be a little more free with your creativity, and especially in the start, don't be afraid to try new genres and new sounds. And it's going to be like frustrating and it's going to be hard, but every time you step into a new world of music, you kind of just learn so much and unlock these new sounds. So I would say, had I done that a little sooner, I feel like I would have been in a better place. But who's to say that the timing wasn't exactly how it was supposed to be?
Absolutely. What would you say is your biggest investment in music?
Ooh. Well, there's the normal, like, run-of-the-mill, just kind of setting up a studio. I've always been pretty minimal. I mean, I get new gear every once in a while, or things that I think will help me. But I would say my biggest investment in music, I started a sample library maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and kind of started taking it seriously within the last year. Because
Wow.
I've always loved like business. I went to school for business, and kind of like the idea of that, and kind of like being able to generate money, take care of people, and kind of like learn that world. And I think that's equally as important as the music, especially with selling stuff online. But that music library just kind of like taking some big risks and putting a lot of money into the people and the idea behind it. And, for a while, and still I haven't recouped most of the money I put into it, but kind of just looking at it long term and things like that.
It's a passion project.
Yeah, yeah, which hopefully one day, just like the Beats, the passion project turns into something very serious. And but you learn so much when you do things like that and start new ideas, and give them like a true try. Like, told myself I'd give it a year, and if it made this amount of money, then I would continue with it. And then I hit those numbers, and I was like, okay, so then you can take it a little more seriously, make it a little more professional. But that's been my biggest investment in the last couple of years.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What sacrifices have you made to get where you are right now?
I didn't finish college. That one upset my parents quite a bit, but kind of like I hit a point where it was either all in with music or all in with that. And the music was already, I was making a pretty good living off of that. I was supporting myself, and it was kind of just like, well, this is what I want to do, so I'm just going to go do it.
Yeah.
That was kind of like the first big sacrifice. And through those first couple years, it was kind of not unhealthy, but, trying to balance going to college, making music, starting a business, and all these things. It was just a lot of like time alone, saying no to a lot of things. I didn't really have I used college as it was the complete opposite of what it was. It was like, usually it's kind of like fun, schoolwork, party. And for me, it was just like buying me time. I knew that all right, because the schools is being paid for or whatever, or if you're taking out loans or whatever it is, I had 4 years basically to figure it out and make it work.
Yeah.
And in year 3, it finally was working to the point where I felt confident enough to leave that. But kind of as I've done this for longer, I've just kind of realized that there's like a balance between, you don't have to be, I think in the beginning you have to make those sacrifices. You have to really put in the hours. You're going to lose some sleep. You're going to be thinking, you're going to be anxious because everything is new, and kind of just navigating that. But as it becomes more serious, it's kind of like, how do I balance this for long term? It's going to social events, still living a normal life, making sure you take care of yourself. And kind of as I've gotten to this point, and, this is just a moment in time in the journey, but I feel like focusing more on just, I don't make music all day like I used to. It's kind of it's a portion of the day, and it's just more quality over quantity, things like that. And just kind of, but in the beginning it was quantity over quality, just to really get those reps in.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah, and you have brief moments where you're like, okay, I really want to just focus, and you'll do a whole month of just heavy work, and you'll see a lot from it, and then you'll live life for a month. I think it's kind of like, if you're not living life, you don't really have any inspiration to create. I feel every time I go to LA and I come back, it's like you're around people that are better than you, or at the same level, or have different techniques, and it's like, by doing those things and letting go for a little bit, you kind of get to watch that and get inspired and learn, which is equally as important. Mac Miller said it. It's a quote that I've always liked. He's, in order to make shit, you have to live life, and I just think it's a great quote.
Rest in peace, man. Rest in peace.
Yeah, seriously.
How do you handle creative block?
I usually just power through. There was a period where there's different periods where it's a lot more difficult, especially the more you create. Kind of having to create something every day can get a little challenging. But my advice for anyone who has ever been blocked up or having creative block is either decide to fully step away and, let it go for a little bit, whether it's a day or two or even a couple hours. But I've always just kind of been if I told myself I was going to make something today, I'm going to make something today. Whether it's the best thing I've made or whether it's decent. And by doing that, I kind of like, one of my friends says, it's like getting out the muddy water. It's kind of like you're blocked up creatively and you're pushing through, and then eventually you get to a point where you've made something that you think is pretty good. And now it's kind of like you feel accomplished, you feel like you've pushed the crap out of the way. And then the next one is kind of like, I go through these waves where it's like I'll be, several weeks of just flowing freely creatively, and then you have a week or two where it's a little more harder than normal. Things don't sound as good as you want them to. But at least in the small amount of time I've been doing this, I've found that it always comes back up and it always comes back down.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, and if you want to be consistent, you just have to keep going, because then it's kind of like the gym. If you take a day off, then you take another day off, then it's easier to take the third day off. Then next thing you know, it's been 5, 6, 7 days and you haven't made any music or you haven't done anything. And then it's just kind of like, it's just way harder to get back into it. So it's like Monday. Absolutely. Yeah, for me, Monday through Friday, it's power through, create whatever you can, and then take a couple of days, go do some stuff. And then, I'm very routine with creativity. I feel like that's a big thing. A lot of people create when they're just inspired, but I feel like if you want longevity, it's kind of, you want to create routinely. Sure. And you'll have brief moments within that routine where you're just very inspired, and those moments remind you just how fun music can be and stuff like that.
Yeah, I got 3 kids, so I take off the weekends, you know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I'm sure you got. I mean, I can't even imagine, bro.
Yep. But how do you determine what is a good song?
I don't know. I was just talking with, I think you're familiar. I saw you guys follow each other, Stoic Beats. We were just talking about this. He was with me in LA last week or 2 weeks ago. And I don't know. It's hard because sometimes you'll make beats that while you're making them, they sound really good. And then you'll listen back and you'll be like, what the hell why did I make this? Or why did I put this out? Yeah. And sometimes it's the opposite. You're making something and you're tired or you're not feeling it. And then you listen back a month later and you're like, whoa, this is some of the best work I've done.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I kind of feel like it's really hard to accurately judge your own music. And it's even harder to have other people judge it. I can't remember who it was, but I just watched a Forbes interview with some producer, and he was basically saying that he's kind of found this thing where, if there's 10 people in a session and 9 of them are bobbing their heads to something you're making, that's 90% of people are going to like it. It's just like you apply that small sample size to the rest of the world, and usually you have a hit on your hands. But when you're creating alone, it's a lot harder to judge that. But my rule is if it gets finished, it goes out. So kind of like that's been the easy deciding factor. So if I don't finish the beat, or I have to ask somebody if it's good, that probably means that, in that moment, it's not good enough for me. And you set it to the side, and maybe you come back to it, maybe you don't. But usually if I'm finishing something and I go all the way through a mix and master on a beat and I decide to put it out, it's kind of like that means that it's ready, and that means it's done. And I think it's a pretty, at least a decent piece. And as a producer, you get to make so much. You're not like an artist where you have to, you are an artist, but it's a different game. It's like you can just put out a lot of beats, and some of them are bound to hit, some of them are bound to not. And sometimes it's the one you expected, and sometimes it's the one you don't expect.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and I've never found a routine on that. Like sometimes you'll make something and you're like, this is really good. And then everyone hears it, they're like, yeah, this is really good. And it takes off. And those are kind of like, they confuse you a bit, but yeah, it's hard.
No, I definitely get it. Are there any books that you can say have changed your life or that have helped you out tremendously?
I had a phase where I was reading a lot. I will say Rick Rubin's book, that is a really good one.
Oh my God. I love that book.
Yeah, I'm sure you've read it, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I got it. But the way that I use that book, I've used it as far as like before I'm entering a session, I read it and then just go into the act with it. And I mean, it's been crazy like that, bro. You know what I mean? So I've just stuck to that. That way I kind of like prolong, I guess, finishing the book.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Because
think
I
I
really
want to
enjoy it,
say,
man. Yeah.
I want to say, I think I read that one once through and then I started it again, but I just love his approach to music and kind of like the very minimal side of it and kind of
Yeah.
like not being too in your head. Because as someone who creates, you're always in your head. You're always thinking if people are gonna like this, and really letting go of that. And then like on the business side of things, I've read kind of the standard books. Like 4 Hour Work Week was a really good one,
Uh-huh.
and that's kind of what like showed me that you know that book dives into like not wasting time on things that aren't important. Kind of a lot of the times I found myself just doing things to fill hours so I could tell everybody I worked 11 hours today and I put in the time, and it's kind of like realistically, only 4 of those hours are productive, and it's like, what are you doing in those 4 hours? And it's kind of that's all you really need to
That's
do.
pushing the needle.
Exactly, yeah. And then the last book, I would say the best one, I think it's called One Thing or something along that. It's a yellow cover, but basically this book is about finding the one thing that you want to do, that you can get good at, and just doing that. And kind of like for a while there, I was like really big on doing everything myself, learning everything, whether it's video or editing photos or creating covers for sample packs, and kind of like, you burn yourself out, and it's good to have those skills and kind of know how to work through everything. But kind of at the end of the day, it's like the one thing I want to do is be a producer. And everything is gonna now go towards that. It's like, what's the one thing I can do every day? The most important thing is make music, and then kind of everything else is secondary. And using other people who are more talented than you in those things, if you're in a position where you can work with people or pay people to do things, it's going to yield a better product.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, and focusing on just that one thing that you want to do. But I still think it's important to learn everything and kind of know your way around whatever it is you want to do that's under your umbrella of creativity and stuff like that.
Is that One Thing book by Gary Keller? Does that sound familiar?
I think that's the name. I think that's, let me pull it up. Yeah, The One Thing by Gary Keller. Yep.
Okay. All right. I'm about to copy it right now, bro.
Yeah, it's an easy read too. I'm pretty sure it's a short book, but I think I've read that one twice. And that was a really good one.
No, absolutely. What would you say is something that music has changed forever for you?
As in, what do you mean by that?
Like it could be like a relationship with family, financially. I mean, what would you say is the top thing?
Top thing music has changed. I mean, it's a vague answer, but I think just life in general, kind of like, I can't imagine a life without music.
Yeah, I got you.
And I kind of hope that one day, or not hope, but I kind of think that one day that might not be the thing. I feel like, who knows how long, this will be sustainable or I'll get to do this, but hopefully for a while. But I think just kind of like being able to make a living from your passion has kind of just changed everything. I have to remind myself it's a very unique and fortunate position, because a lot of people don't even know what they want to do, or they're not able to translate the passion into a livable income. And that just filters down to everything. You're more free, you're happier most of the time because you're doing what you like, and kind of just your relationships feel better, you feel more present, and I guess things like that. So I would say just overall, just the fact that I get to do what I like to do for a living is a pretty insane thing to grasp.
Nah, for real. How did you get your name?
I wish I had an exciting answer for that, but I think it was, I remember making the name and making the channel, even my picture, the skeleton, was all supposed to be temporary. I was just kind of like, I was making so many beats and I was like, I have to put them somewhere. And I think I was listening to like Lil Skies, or somebody was on Spotify, and I was like, I like the look of Skies. And then I just kind of like was searching for cool words, and I found Eerie, but I didn't like the way the IE looked, because then it was too many E's in the name. So I was like, I'm just gonna put a Y because it sounds the same, and I'll save the name, I'll save the picture as the profile picture, and then I'll change it, in a couple months. And it was kind of like, it was one of those things where I didn't think it was a good name. But I knew that like when you searched it, nothing else came up. It stood out, and kind of I was like, it'll be good for now. And then once things kind of started working, it was like I formed the identity around that name, and then I just began to like really really like it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but my profile picture on my computer is named temporary logo. I just never never changed it, and kind of but yeah, so not a very exciting.
Who would you say is your top 5 inspiration?
Ooh, top 5 inspiration. It's always changing from time to time, but lately I've found a lot of like people and friends in my life. Like I said, I'm in a position where I've gotten to befriend a lot of really talented people. So just like the inner circle of people I get to work with is definitely at the top of the list. But Mac Miller is a big one. Frank Ocean's inspired a lot of music, even though he doesn't really make a lot of stuff. But really, it's always so hard to answer that question because like I feel like I have the answer, but then when someone asks, you're like, oh, I don't really know. But then in an hour, I'll be like, oh, I should have said this. But
it's all good, man. When it comes out, just comment what you wanted to say.
Yeah, I like to look at people like who across the board inspire, like not even just musically, but there's people, artists and producers and things, like a Monty Booker, who I just think like from the music to the branding to the way he presents himself to the way he carries himself, like across the board, kind of like finding those models. The Alchemist is a really good one, just kind of like very tasteful, very true to themselves, and like they build this world and then they bring people into the world. Tyler the Creator does it really well. Those types of people kind of are really what inspire me, because I feel like they're like models for success, and kind of like trying to model after them, you're gonna naturally end up doing it your own way. And it's gonna kind of, you're taking inspiration, just like making a type beat. It's like I'm taking inspiration from this artist, but I'm using my sounds, my process, and it's always gonna come out a little different. It's always gonna have a little bit of you in it. And music that's such a big thing. I mean, everyone is inspired by someone, whether it's a genre, a sound, an artist, or how they carry themselves, things like that.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you, man, taking some time to come on here and drop some gems for us.
Yeah, man, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anything you're working on that you want to shout out? Or you want to talk about that's on the way?
I did just drop a sample pack this week. It's like a new take on like music, very cinematic and kind of like experimental.
How much is it?
$29.99 for compositions, and then $39.99 for the comps and stems.
That's what's up. That's cheap.
I try and for my music library, the way I run it, I try and just provide a lot of value, and make sure the stuff is priced to reflect that value. But also, I understand that if you're a producer and you're just getting started, you don't have all the money in the world. I mean, I remember I wasn't buying sample packs in the beginning because they were $60-$70, and but yeah. And other than that, I mean, it's just the normal beats, just always making things, always trying things, and kind of new ideas. But nothing crazy at the moment.
Okay. All right, brother. Well, I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no doubt.
Cool. All right, man. We'll talk soon.
All right, brother. Peace.
All right. See you.